Hello, guys. Today we have with us Martino Simcik Arese. Have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yes, Martino Simcik is correct. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so we have with us Martino Simcik Arese. I associate with him at least through Copa90, and he has also written for the Tifo Magazine and now also Peleza, Brazil. Am I right?
Peleza, yeah.
Peleza, Brazil. Sorry. So basically, I have invited you to mainly talk about footballing cultures in various countries, and the fans overall around this world. So first of all, good to see you and good to talk to you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. So my first question goes: how's the football tourism industry, and how are the leagues since we are a year into the post-COVID era now?
I mean, the football tourism industry, I mean, in the sense of people are traveling for football, I mean, I guess it's back very much. I mean, since COVID-19, I mean, there was a moment where everything was stopped, stadiums were closed. And I think what we noticed everywhere around the world is that football had a boom. I mean, I think that COVID-19 and the separation from being locked down, being away from your home, being away from your communities, really reinforced the importance of football everywhere. And since we've seen kind of the reopening of football stadiums, I think we've seen an explosion of enthusiasm around world football. Some of the biggest atmospheres, just in 3 European finals this year, right? 2 of them ran out of water because of how many people attended the stadium, and one of them was delayed by 45 minutes. The level of fervor and enthusiasm for football is so very much back, and I think that the pandemic in the last 3 years really reinforced why football was so important to people.
Yeah, so it almost seems like the stadiums weren't prepared for it. You said that they ran out of water. Yeah. It's like, unfortunately,
it was disorganization on the part of the authorities, but I think it also speaks to the level of enthusiasm on the part of the fans.
Do you think that the Euro 2020, which occurred in 2021, was like the threshold? Because after that point, you could see the sudden reintroduction of fans back into the stadiums.
No, I mean, I think the rules and regulations was the threshold. I mean, I think that it just took a long time for authorities to determine how to best deal with COVID-19 and what to do. And I think that there's still no real consensus, but everyone seems to have given up on isolation. And now that we're somewhat vaccinated, things broke through. I think in a deeper way, though, I don't think it was necessarily the Euros that created this. I mean, the Euros helped, obviously, it was this moment, but I think it was not having football. I think it was everyone being locked down inside of their homes, inside their spaces, realizing what an important force football is for gathering community, right? Like there's nothing that large that does that besides like certain very rare musicians and religious gatherings. And religious gatherings are inherently divisive, right? Because I mean, oftentimes men can't sit next to women, and oftentimes, obviously, like me believing in one God means that believing in your God also is totally not allowed, right? By like definition of the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So football has this amazing, amazing element to it where it really kind of gathers people. And I think the response we've seen to football since COVID-19 speaks to just how valuable it is in our society.
Yeah, that's good to know. But now that the stadiums are back in order, is the football tourism industry back in order? I mean, not just the tourism, also, your documentaries, like you say, are South America, the USA, Africa, are they coming back to normal too, and not just Europe? Because Europe, everyone knows about, but the others.
Yeah, I think that the football, I mean, I think people, obviously, everyone travels to Europe because everyone wants to see the big European stars. I wonder how big football tourism was before traveling into Asia or to Africa to go watch football, right? It's something I've always been very interested in because I'm much more interested in the communities around football than the actual games or the quality on the pitch. But in my experience, I mean, within Europe, yes, football tourism is very much back. Every single game I've gone to this season, I mean, I've been through just for work projects, right? I've been to Rayo Vallecano. I saw fans of other supporters groups visiting there. I went to Roma Lazio. It was full of other fans from all over the world in line on the airplane on the way to the game, waiting to go see that game. The day I went to Chelsea Crystal Palace, I heard tons of Brazilians and South American fans being in London just to witness that game, probably connected to, Chelsea's imminent demise and Crystal Palace being bought or buying into a Brazilian club. When I went to Hajduk Split and Torcida Split, I very much saw the usual fans that I see kind of traveling to these Eastern European environments, kind of documenting the ultras culture there. So I would say, and then when I went to the African Champions League, I was the only foreigner I saw. I went to the Champions League final in Morocco between Al Ahly and Wydad Casablanca. And on that occasion, I was the only one traveling abroad. So, I mean, within my own kind of anecdotal experience, I would say that football tourism is very much back in Europe, but very much slow elsewhere.
Oh, so basically Europe is exactly where people went, and that's where they're going mostly again.
In my experience, yes, but I mean, I think that in general, when people want to travel abroad for football, the attraction is to go and see the European teams. I mean, I have friends, of course, who are like in Mexico right now, seeing second division football matches and stuff. But this is a much more rare form of football tourism, which is
Also, what I wanted to tell you was, first of all, that at least your videos with Copa90, all the Derby Days videos, all the videos about, let's say, Rayo Vallecano or some, those niche teams, they are what introduced a love for fans, their culture, and their unique traditions to me. And really, I thank you to you, and I mentioned
amazing.
The guys
Thank
I know
you
for
so much for watching. It really gives me purpose to hear that. Good.
Really lovely to say that. Also, by the way, if sorry to ask you because I didn't know this answer, but what's your nationality exactly? Which country?
So I was born in the US, in Los Angeles, and then I was raised between Los Angeles and Milan in Italy.
Oh, so do you have a favorite?
But
hello guys. Today all good to see you and good to talk.
COVID-19 and the separation from being locked down, being away from your home, being away from your communities, really reinforced the importance of football everywhere.
Sure.
And since we've seen kind of the reopening of football stadiums, I think we've seen an explosion of enthusiasm around world football. Some of the biggest atmospheres, So, I mean, in 3 European finals this year, right? 2 of them ran out of water because of how many people attended the stadium, and one of them was delayed by 45 minutes. The level of fervor and enthusiasm for football is so very much back, and I think that the pandemic in the last 3 years really reinforced why football is so important to people. And so organizations,
so it almost seems like the stadiums weren't prepared for it. You said
the country. From there, and a lot of the work there, and participating in kind of interesting summer tournaments and organizing activities around there, I started a football magazine in Montreal with a friend of mine called Tifo Magazine. That Tifo Magazine kept me in Montreal for 2 years, where I established that. And then from developing Tifo Magazine, I met Ellie Menjum, who's the presenter of the Derby Days and Copa90 stuff, at an ice cream shop in New York. We got to talking, and a few months later, he invited me to London to start working with Copa90. So that's all been a very kind of natural, organic process. And now, since then, after 7 years at Copa90, I've gone freelance, where I still work often with Copa90, and the relationship is very good. But it just provides me opportunities to be able to work with other spaces kind of more abroad and internationally as well.
Oh, wow. So as a freelancer, you produce content, right? You write and you...
Yeah, so it's all kinds of different aspects to it. I mean, with one client, for instance, I'll be working on just creative advising. So for some of the World Cup campaigns, I'm just providing, insights about the athletes or insights about creative, interesting artists or artist movements. I mean, just last night I was hanging out with these guys, Camp Seedorf, which is a graffiti crew from Amsterdam, and they came into London for a photo shoot, and we were walking around the city together doing some stuff. So it's just really about like constantly being in relationship with different football people, different people doing interesting creative stuff. Another thing I'm creating. Hold on 1 second. Let me show you. Just give me 1 second. On Thursday, I'm launching this magazine that I made in my house, which is 11 stories about Italian football culture.
Wow, Italian football culture. Yeah, man.
Yeah, but it's all in English.
Yeah, of course.
So it's about just doing different projects. So there's this one, there's the other one, then there's the stuff that I do for Peleza, which is making these documentaries. I mean, waiting to see kind of what's next when the season restarts again in Europe. And then, still working with Copa90 on various projects. So, I mean, really kind of a wide range of different people, and just trying to stay involved in interesting football stuff. And more than anything, just keep producing interesting stuff that I'm passionate about, and using my interests and connections to kind of sustain being able to make unique things and tell unique stories in football.
I think interesting stories in football will never end, right? I mean, every
I mean,
year
yeah,
something
it's an
new
endless
churns.
one. There's always more places to look, more things to find, you know. And the thing is, the stories and the narratives, they get more interesting with every year because the game is constantly evolving and constantly changing, you know. I mean, whether it's, you know, you look at stories that they kind of look in the past and how different football was to what football looks like today, and this kind of constant evolution of the game and the way our relationship kind of changes with it and the way it comes to mirror the way the last 150 years of human history becomes something very interesting, right? It becomes not just about a game, but it becomes a definition of what is your nation or what is your identity or how do you feel about a certain thing. And you can take this in football from like LGBTQ football clubs. You
Yeah,
can take football from, there's a flat earth football team in Spain
there
for
is.
people who believe the earth is flat. There
Yeah.
is like, you know, there's a tournament where goths go play football, and everyone who's into goth culture in the UK, and they dress like Dracula and play football together. There's walking football in the UK for like, there's a tournament that the Vatican plays amongst all the priests of the Vatican.
Mhm.
One thing I would love to do within India is to go see Kerala Sevens and be in a place like Kerala, which has the difficult relationship with constructing the World Cup in Qatar, which has the deep, profound relationship with the Brazil and Argentina national team, and
Mhm.
Kerala Sevens all at once, right? Like there's so many stories within football that can kind of touch on our identities and what does it mean and how it relates to other things. It becomes this very quick and useful tool to really also become related, right? Like, what do I know about Kerala and Keralese culture? If I don't have football, it makes no sense to me, right? It takes me a lot more, it takes me a
Yeah,
lot
yeah, yeah.
longer to understand it, right?
You know, it really helps to connect with people because whenever, let's say, I used to play chess online, or let's say, I'm just having some fun on Omegle and talking to people. The first
Yeah,
thing I ask them is after their country is whether they know this football club, because that's where connect with every single person. And even
absolutely.
as I went to my college, the first thing I asked every single fan was which club they supported. Then we had some banter about it, and that's how we connect. And that's a really good way to connect, I feel.
Yeah, I think it's really important. You know, I think it's really important. I think to that same extent, I mean, you have this side where people connect with international clubs. And I also think what's really interesting now is people are connecting with their local clubs in places where their local clubs used to not mean anything, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The explosion of how people are getting more passionate about football in North America because of the MLS and the USL is very interesting. The way Indonesian football has absolutely exploded with enthusiasm.
Oh, I think there's some violence too,
Very,
right? Now it has reached a point beyond passion. It's toxicity, I guess, now in Indonesia.
it's in a sense toxicity, but what does that say about Indonesian society and how it works and how it's divided by all of these islands? And like this toxicity is not a byproduct of football. This
Oh,
toxicity is the byproduct of the place.
mhm.
Like in Italy, football fans got violent in the origins of ultras culture comes in the 1960s, in the years that we call the years of lead in Italy, where there's so much political turmoil. People are, shooting politicians. There's terrorist attacks from foreign right and left parties in the train stations, right? It was this moment where like a lot of people were dying and there was a lot of violence in the street, and football violence emerged in that time. So again, like when we look at all these places, I don't think you can never blame football as the cause or the symptom of any of this thing. I think you have to look
Yeah.
at society at
Football is more
large.
of a reflection of how the same culture, basically behaves just about the game. I think, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and what moment is that culture going through historically?
Mm, yeah, so true. It's a reflection. Also, I think what was the question I wanted to ask? Yeah, it was about North America. How is the culture improving there? You mentioned something about North American culture, so I'd like
I
to
mean, I
know.
think it's very interesting because I mean, first of all, where you'd see kind of, because football is not the traditional sport in North America, there's
Mhm.
a much more open-minded relationship with football than maybe other sports, where the NFL or baseball can sometimes feel very conservative. Football in the US tends to be much more open-minded and interesting. And you have interesting situations where, like in Utah, there's a very big Mormon culture. And it's known that the Mormons go see the Utah Jazz, and then the non-Mormons go see Real Salt Lake. right? That's very unique. Or every football club in the US right now has like a Latino supporter section in their stands, which is very different from the kind of MLS pushed European narrative of football that traditionally came about. And you're seeing these kind of two spaces meet themselves. And I think in a lot of ways, also in the US, there's always been, football was always held down in a lot of ways as a way of being American. You would like baseball, you would reject the kind of more sport, right? I mean, I'm sure India has similar relationships to similar sports.
Yeah, cricket is the major thing.
Yeah, and with time, you know, it's, I think for a lot of people, discovering football again is connected not just with discovering football again, but discovering your identity again. So, you know, people in Chicago get excited about being third generation Polish, but seeing, you know, like seeing their kind of football club connect and maybe a Polish football player sign for them, or maybe they start a supporters group and it's connected to somewhere in Europe that connects to their origin, right? I think that is very exciting in terms of what football is creating in the US and how it's a little bit changing people's relationship with where they came from.
You know, that really hit the nail on the head, because the thing is, I'm from Mumbai, but my ancestors are from Goa. So basically, when I came to Goa and when I see Goan players succeed, you know, somewhere I feel that, yeah, there's this feeling of feeling good. Yeah, this is my home, my ancestral connection. So football also provides you that. And
yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, it's a big question of identity, and it gets more and more interesting now when people rarely just have, I mean, obviously people have their first club, their one club, right? Like my club is Mira. But now we've gotten to a point where football is so ubiquitous and it's everywhere and you can see it on TV and it's so accessible that everyone has a second and third club, and everyone's starting to tie their kind of second and third club with parts of how they might identify as people, right?
Is that the case everywhere? I didn't know this. I mean, I thought it's in India, something which in...
I mean, I would say that most people I know in England, if you ask them what's your favorite team in Italy, they have an answer.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone in one league, yeah.
Have an answer. They'll give me, like, maybe they won't tell you, oh, my favorite team in Spain is someone, but they'll definitely tell you, I prefer Real Madrid to Barcelona or vice versa. Right? Like, just because at some point you make a choice, because it happens 4 times a year and you're there in front of the TV and you make a choice. Like,
Yeah.
you know, because it's more fun to make a choice, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's better to back someone in every single league. So
yeah, I mean, it's like as I always say, as an AC Milan fan, my worst favorite game of the year is Inter Juventus, because I hope for a 0-0 with lots of injuries.
That's such an honest answer, you know. Yeah, that's exactly what you hope for. But now the thing is, the USA is made up of so many immigrants. So why do they still have such a small amount of football fans, or did they before now?
I mean, I think that it's always been growing rapidly. I think that historically the US almost had an intentional approach to not growing and developing the game in the US in the past. That's obviously changing now. And yeah, so, you know, you have to look at it from an institutional FA, which, much like the disaster that is the Indian FA, right? You create the Super League, you break down the old league, you destroy Mariners in the process, you destroy East Bengal in the process. It's like, you know, it takes time for football to develop and for like the interest of who's financing football and the interests of the community that exists to kind of reach a point. I mean, US football culture, I think, still has a way to go because it needs to develop a relegation system.
Yeah, that was my next question, brother. Pro Rel in the US, when do you think it's happening?
I don't know. I think it'll happen in India first.
Yeah, it will.
I think that it seems to me that it's very tied to the US model of sports, that you can't risk a team falling out of the first league.
Okay.
And like, if you look at the way the NFL or the NBA or the MLB is structured, right? There's equal money distribution, and at the end of the day, the teams are never at that big of a risk, because even if a team does terrible for 4 years, the team will still be in the first league playing against the big teams.
Is it because the league is divided into teams? The teams have their fans, and the league doesn't want to lose the
Think about
fans.
it, you risk more on your investment. Like
Mhm.
no one investing in something wants to depend on, 14, 22-year-olds being healthy
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
playing well together. It's a big risk with your money. Like
yeah.
if you're gonna spend $20 million on something, maybe it's better to invest it in like a steel factory or something, like
Mm.
it's so
They
it's
invest out of passion generally. Yeah.
understandable why the debate around relegation is very difficult. And but I think it's been a mess. I think it's been a mess, and I think that US football culture will always be second place to Europe unless they develop a relegation system.
Okay. So do you notice any more continental differences, between Europe, South America, North America? Because as a traveler, I think as a person who has traveled and seen the cultures, do you feel that there's a difference on the continental level, or is it more based on
I think
nationalities?
that there's different relationships with these things, I mean, I think so in North America, obviously it's all very new and it's very much connected to like trying to build this new culture that feels almost separate from Americanness that was always there. In Europe, it like every football club is connected to like the local saints of the city and the bell towers and the history and kind of all the elements and symbolism of that city play into the football club. So you can't disconnect AC Milan from Sant'Ambrogio and the Madonnina at the top of the Duomo of Milan, and the choreographies that you see in the stadium reflect all of these things, from the snake on Inter's shirt to the devil on Milan shirt, which you can see in the stem of the Visconti Palace. And so there's very much a feeling of like these places have a long history, and then the football clubs represent the
Intertwined.
tradition.
Yeah, and they're intertwined, right? Yeah,
Well,
totally.
but yeah, it's like the football clubs continue to celebrate this history, and almost in some way, the football rivalry is like you play on stereotypes from the 1600s to joke about the other team.
Oh,
Like we get into when I did Atalanta Brescia, you get into this thing of like people are talking to each other about the Redbeards' famous battle in 1310 as the beginning of why Atalanta hates Brescia over the Austrian Venetian empires.
oh.
And in the same way, I think that one thing that's very interesting about South America is, South America doesn't have much recorded history because Europeans kind of destroyed all of the history in South America, right?
Yeah.
And so a team like Boca Juniors or a team like Santos or a team like Corinthians or Peñarol, when they win a trophy, it literally is like their battle in 1300s.
Hmm.
Like, like they add it to the church or they
That is
add
where
it
the
to the
history is
wall.
etched. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like you would add it, in India, you would add it as part of a side of a temple to remember a moment where like Ganesh did a special miracle or something, right? And you'd be like, this is part of it,
Mhm.
and you tie it to something, right? In South America, it's like, this is boom, Boca Juniors won the Libertadores. It's the same thing as when you invaded Tuscany in 1600.
Oh,
you
that's
know?
how, yeah, yeah,
Um,
because I guess that's
and
what they have to
I think this
compare.
is
Yeah,
where you see this passion in South America, which feels more, it feels bigger.
yeah, yeah.
It feels bigger. And I mean, whenever I try to think of why or what's happening rationally that it makes it feel so much bigger, the only thing I can really conclude is that, which is that it's for them, it's building a new history. It's not reinforcing an old one.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Also, do you feel that somewhere, I'm not sure about this, but as much as I know about the fans, is it also because the immigrants are mainly Spanish and Italian? And generally, those countries are where the
Where
fans are a bit wilder. In South America, yeah.
um I mean, yes and no, right? Like South America has a huge history of slavery. A lot of the immigrants in South America are Black and came from Africa.
Mhm.
Like there is like the second largest Japanese city in the world is in Brazil, right? Like I don't think you can connect it
Easily
to
track.
Italian. I mean, obviously, I think historically, right? If you look at the movement of football, right, football is moved by merchants, right? So
Mm.
English merchants traveling around the world move football. And obviously, Spain and Italy adopted these games very heavily because it made a lot of sense for very mercantile cultures who were traveling and trading in the end of the 1800s a lot, right? Next
Yeah.
to England. But like really a lot of the trading was happening via Italy or Spain, right? And being shipped out to those kind of countries. So inevitably, yes, they kind of bring football, and that's the element. But I think, I mean, football is brought by everyone in South America, and I mean, it's I think one thing that becomes so interesting about it again is where you're going to this place that doesn't have this deep history. While like in Italy, it's taking a long time to see a black player like Balotelli play on the national team. In South America, you see much more diversity immediately, right?
Yeah.
And it's because, you know, Alvaro Recoba is called El Chino, and he was like one of the great, and he was one of the great Uruguayan players, right? The Alvaro Recoba who played for Venezia and Inter, right? So like yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult. You can say maybe it's connected to Italy and Spain in some way, but I think so much more it's connected to. Okay, football is big because football is big. Because if you're going to make the most simple game possible and you're going to put down two shoes and a ball or a round object, you can play football, which is fine,
Yeah.
right? And then it explodes and develops massively in South America for this reason. You know, I think that's really the easiest way to connect to it. And I would, yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that it comes from sort of this like ethnic Italian Spanish thing at all. No, I think that.
Oh, you don't
I
think that's the case?
think that's just how great football is, which is people are inherently attracted to it. And then, you know, I mean, of course, you could say that the Italian, the Spanish teams help develop in these places, and it's impossible to deny. But at the same time, you know, like Uruguay became great at football because of Nacional, and Nacional was the first team supported by Uruguayans, right? Like, and so many of these teams in South America had this very important thing of not being an English dominated club or not being run by just the businessmen, but making your own team.
Yeah.
And if you follow football, that's how the history of it has always gone. From the first game in Spain in Huelva, when English miners were running a mine until the Spanish miners decided to play the English miners, right? Like, this is just, people adopt football naturally because football's fun, man.
Yeah, so true. For India, I think Mohan Bagan was the club who, who laid the cornerstone of defeating the colonists, because they were the ones who won the Durand Cup, I think. So those were they were the club giving us signs that even we can beat the British. So yeah, the next question is that which is the best footballing nation to visit right now as a fan?
I mean, it depends what you're looking for. I would argue, if you want to, depends. I mean, it depends really what you're looking for. Like, England is an amazing place to go watch football. I can't deny it. I live here, so I don't love a lot of things about England, but like today they introduced standing again back into English stadiums by law today.
They did? Oh, it's a historic day then. Wow.
It's a historic day. You know, there's so many levels of football, so many leagues. The facilities are so nice. England is a really special place to experience football. At the same time, if I was going to recommend being able to experience very diverse experiences of football, right? Like, Italy becomes very fun in terms of that, because from one region to the next, it feels very different all of a sudden. And so you get this kind of cultural depth, and you get this vibe of the ultras, which is very interesting. It kind of teaches you a little bit about the rivalries and the bell towerisms. But then, you know, if you go to Germany, Germany's so convenient.
Germany is so non-toxic, you know. I think the German culture is so, it's so pleasant and it's so good towards its players. And as a community, they're a lot more helpful in building each other. Whereas in other countries, I've noticed maybe it's a little bit more about the hate in Latin America. Maybe, not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Germany's a really fun football culture, though. And in terms of, if I was to go somewhere, probably like going back to the tourism question, to travel for football, Germany all summer until the end of August is doing €7 to ride on the transport system across the whole country. For €7 right now in Germany, you can take a train that will take you from Schalke to Dortmund to Cologne to Hanover to Nuremberg to Munich to Leipzig. You can go all of it for €7.
Oh, that's
All that football in like 3 weeks in Germany. You know, you can't deny the experience of traveling around Germany and going to see the football. Also, if you go to a stadium in Italy, you need to register your passport. It's more difficult than flying on an airplane, right? So as nice as it is, you need to have your name tied to the ticket. In Germany, you don't. It's much nicer.
is
So
that
I
what
mean,
the
in
protests were about? Is that
Western
what
Europe, I would say those are the best. Obviously, it depends what you're looking for, though. You know, are you
the
looking for crazy 90 minutes, Balkans, almost borderline hooligan culture, explosions and flares? Then you should go to Serbia. If you're
yeah,
looking for South American passion, enthusiasm, you know, obviously,
Aguante, yeah, then you should go.
vision.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, that's why so many people are interested in football. I think is because they come at it from so many different angles, and there's so many different sides of football that are appealing to people. You know, someone who likes the culture in Argentina might not like the culture in Germany, and vice versa, right?
So yeah, so yeah, like I said, what do you think are the two best games, two best stadiums, and two best city locations in football? I mean, this is asking you too many
Yeah, no.
answers, but
So, I mean, one of the best games in world football, easy right now, is to experience is to do Genova Sampdoria, which you won't have this year because Genova is now in the second division. But
oh,
when you had it, Genova Sampdoria was unbelievable. It was the stadium is incredible. The atmosphere is fantastic. I think they run an average of like 2.3 more kilometers a game when that game is played than every other game in the season or something crazy like that. It's unbelievable, the experience of the Genova derby. I would say another one that is really special is probably Hajduk Split.
yeah.
Hajduk Split is a really cool experience, also because the kind of history of the club, the relationship between Dinamo Zagreb and Hajduk Split, and what that says about kind of Croatian culture, I think is very interesting. And then one experience, which I think hands down is probably the most interesting in terms of atmosphere, which people don't really think of, is the Torneo de Verano in South America. So there's only one time a year where you get Boca and River in the same stadium, and it's in the summer tournament when they play in Mar del Plata.
Oh,
And that was the coolest thing I've ever
so
seen.
basically, home and away fans facing each other, you mean?
Well, they're both away. They're playing on a beach town that's like 5 hours from
Yeah, no,
Buenos
I know
Aires.
they're both away, but basically that is one of the few rare occasions where they
The
actually.
only time where you see 15,000 Boca fans and 15,000 River Plate fans, and they're singing at each other. And they
Damn.
enter the stadium 4 hours early, and like Boca Juniors lost when I went, and the Boca Juniors fans stayed because the River Plate fans couldn't leave until Boca left. And Boca just stayed in the stadium and kept dancing just to make the River Plate fans annoyed for like 4 hours.
Wow.
Everyone went home at like 3 a.m. for a summer friendly match.
For a
It
summer
was cool.
friendly.
For a
Yeah.
summer friendly. It's yeah, I think Mar del Plata in Argentina for that summer tournament is it's so cool. Also, it doesn't ever feel violent.
It
It's
doesn't.
just fun.
It doesn't.
That game, no, the summer friendly, not really. I mean, it never felt violent for me.
Whereas the Super Clásico did.
I mean, I've been to the Super Clásico and the Libertadores final, and I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, they didn't start the second one. You know,
That's
they
how.
played it in Madrid. Like it's
Yeah.
a very different experience going when something matters.
Wow. And which are the two stadiums and cities you'd like to, fans to explore?
Like stadiums and cities. I mean, there's too many to count. Like what do you want me to get into? I mean, I
Personally,
think
I'd like the Camp Nou because my favorite international club is Barca, and maybe La Bombonera. That's one club I'd
yeah,
like
I
to.
mean, La Bombonera is an amazing experience. El Nuevo Gasómetro is also amazing to see San Lorenzo and their chance.
Mhm.
In London, I would say Crystal Palace is the best stadium to visit. I personally don't like a lot of these new stadiums. I think that like the Camp Nou and the Bernabeu and these very modern stadiums, they lack passion. They're a early sign of a lot of the problems that you see happening in Indian football today. And I think that so much of what I see that makes me happy about the movement of Mohun Bagan and East Bengal supporters and protesting their clubs is trying to stop what's happened at Barcelona and Real Madrid from happening to them, from taking a historical institution that means so much to this place and turning it into a soulless, empty business that no longer has any real connection with its fans, but just exists to attract
for cash grabs. Yeah.
Right. Which fine. I'm glad that tourists come to football and I'm glad people experience it. But part of the experience of enjoying that football shouldn't just be putting on a list that you saw the Camp Nou. It should be having a relationship with meeting someone from Catalonia and finding out what that identity is and going to drink absinthe in the late night bars and have paella and like live all of that idea, right? And I think all too often a lot of these big clubs have lost sight of it. So I mean, for any of your followers, if there's any one piece of advice I'll give, it's avoid the top 4 teams.
Yeah. So you were saying, yeah. Yeah. So as you were saying, top 4 is not advised.
I mean, I think generally the top 4 is not advised. Obviously, there's some exceptions, but I find that the experience of football is much more interesting, usually outside of those top 4. Obviously, I have the luxury of, I travel all the time. I see big football. I've watched Cristiano Ronaldo play in 8 different matches. I've seen Messi play in 4 different matches. It's very easy for me to sit here and tell you, don't go to the top 4 of football. But I think that, you know, once you've seen that, once you've experienced it and lived it, and okay, the much deeper relationship that really football can give you and the much more you can get out of it is by visiting these lower teams whose identity is not built on trophies, but whose identity is built on the community around it. And almost with that lack of success comes a stronger bond with the club, which is, to me, much more valuable.
It's a lot more loyal. Yeah, because also it's like when you go to a town, you'd rather experience the food at a local pub or a shanty rather than, you know, going to a 5-star restaurant, which you might get at another chain somewhere else. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a bit like that. But you know, but obviously with football, I mean, if you go and watch a team which is, you know, middle of the table and they're playing against a team with, you know, I went to watch Rayo Vallecano Real Madrid this year. You know, I enjoyed it because I spent the whole time with Rayo Vallecano supporters, learning about Vallecas, the neighborhood, the community, the tradition, everything going on around there. But then for 90 minutes, I got to watch Benzema try to score on Zidane's son. So you know what I mean? Like you get it all. But I wasn't walking around the Bernabeu being sold Heineken hats and like it's like Disneyland, you know. Like I was in a place that was much more real and much more intimate. We had this experience, and then yes, I also watched Benzema be the greatest striker of our generation.
Yeah. You got the best of both worlds, yeah. Also, what I wanted to ask you in the end was, you know, nowadays there are a lot of new things being introduced to football. So like there's conservatives and there are people who want new stuff. There are people who don't. So where do you lie there? And what do you think about these opinions? Are you a bit more on the conservative side or do you want more changes in football?
Changes in football in what sense? I mean, I think in a lot of ways I might be a little bit on the more conservative side. I think football needs to be prioritized for being something at the stadium. I think that needs to be incentivized again, and people should be going to the ground. I think the idea of playing an FA Cup final or an Italian Cup final in a country that isn't Italy is crazy. I think the idea of moving La Liga games to Florida is a horrible idea. You know, I think that probably if people have residential addresses that are near the area of the football ground, ideally they would get discounts to go to the games. like it's maybe one of the only things I'm somewhat conservative about is, you
Oh.
know, I mean, for me, there would be no VAR. For me, you would maximize the experience of the supporter in every way possible. But I don't know, I also understand that VAR.
Yeah, VAR is still pretty much understandable. Although you know that somewhere there is this
No, I mean, it
loss
sucks.
of.
It sucks. Waiting for a VAR to overturn the decision of a. I mean, it's a different kind of drama, and yes, it's its own drama, but you know, it's not.
I think even I am on the conservative side, but the thing is, I thought for me, a 19-year-old kid,
Goal in the 90th minute, and we all have to sit there quietly and wait for VAR to decide if it's a goal. Is like
rude to us. You know, it's almost rude that we can't celebrate with our full joy.
terrible. It's terrible. It takes away that moment of explosive joy
Ecstasy.
that football gives you.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, this last question, I'd like to wrap up the interview and the podcast. You know, first of all, I had great fun talking to you and really enjoyed. Hope we have another podcast. Sometimes I just really like to talk to you.
Pleasure. Absolutely, man. Thank you. I'm glad you reached out.
Also, what are your plans ahead? Just if you know, you have to.
So plans ahead. I am something for you. I don't know. I work a little bit with FIFA Plus. I'm working on FIFA Plus's new channel. So some of the new content on there, I'm kind of helping organize and a lot of the creator commission stuff. I've got some things coming down the pipeline, hopefully big stuff for bigger TV networks and stuff via Copa90, but we'll see. And then I'm launching
the magazine, yeah.
Magazine, Bala Mag. Hopefully you'll put a link to our Instagram page. Order it. We ship internationally. It would be amazing if someone from India actually bought my magazine.
Do you ship internationally? Are you planning on
ship internationally? I mean, you have to pay the shipping costs with it, but yeah, we'll ship internationally. We'll ship anywhere.
Yeah.
So put an order in, anyone who's interested. And yeah, this summer, hopefully an interesting summer of getting ready for the new season, and we'll see what happens as we build up to Qatar. To me, again, the most interesting story via the World Cup in Qatar will be in Kerala.
What? Sorry, I didn't understand what you're trying to say.
The most interesting World Cup story during Qatar will be in Kerala.
Oh, yeah, totally. Argentina and Brazil fans there.
Argentina, Brazil fans, Kerala Sevens, but also like very difficult relationship with the workers at the World Cup, man.
Immigrants.
You know, like we're talking, I think there's probably close to 2,000 Kerala residents who aren't coming back from building this tournament as everyone's enthusiastic about it. Like,
yeah, the snatched passports.
I have to ask what's going on, guys. Like that, to me, that's the story. I'm so curious. I want to know how people perceive it in a place that is passionate about football, but at the same time, and I think maybe us in the West have this view that all of this migrant labor is all bad, but clearly some people are probably getting some vertical mobility and growing out of it also. I don't know. To me, this is the big, interesting kind of football world question.
I'll let you know. I'll dig up some info of my own and I'll let you know. Okay.
Please.
So anyway, great to talk to you. Had a lot of fun. Okay, bye.
Omkar, thank you so much.